Welcome to season 2 of the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a jack of all trades based in Nashville, Tennessee. At the young age of just 20, she's already got plenty of releases under her belt, combining styles of jazz, pop, R&B with even a taste of folk. She has a sound like no other that you'll certainly want to hear. Welcome, Jade.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
So I always like to get started kind of with where your journey with music all started.
Okay. Um, so my mom put me into like piano at a super young age. And I like grew a huge love for it, which is why like I'm still continuing at Belmont. I'm still doing a classical piano minor, just because it really means a lot to me. But I started to learn how to like sing and play, and I got really into singing. And then in like high school, my voice teacher, Leah, she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm also like a freelance audio engineer, and like if you ever want to record a song, like you can reach out to me." And then I decided to do that. And so I have recorded like all of my music with her since then. She's really great. And she's also been super nice that since she's a freelance audio engineer, she has also introduced me to like the audio world, and like she's kind of become my mentor and has taught me a lot about like other aspects of audio that I want to go into. So yeah, very exciting.
So when did it kind of turn from, like, obviously you started in piano, when did it kind of turn into like you started writing music? Like where was that kind of transition?
I think my first piano teacher, she didn't put a big emphasis on my classical training. She was really big on like learning to sing and play. So it kind of started pretty early. But what would happen is like we would go to different senior centers and then like have little recitals where I would sing and play. And at first it was like a lot of old-timey jazz songs that she knew, which is also how I got into jazz. And then that just made me really want to experiment around with like writing and things like that.
So at what point did it kind of like start to come together with like beyond just experimenting with writing, but turning into like, oh, I'm actually like putting songs together and then kind of turning into
Yeah.
I'll release them.
I think my in high school, my mom was super encouraging about me recording my first song. So the first two songs I ever recorded were covers because I wasn't really comfortable with my own music yet. So it was kind of like recording those, putting them out, and then like checking on it. Like I didn't think anything would come of it, so I literally did not look at the results for it, like statistics at all for like half a year. And then I looked at it, I'm like, this has like 20,000 streams. What? But that kind of gave me like the boost of confidence I needed to like finish what I had started writing, and I was more comfortable with the recording process at that point. So in high school, I started taking songwriting like a lot more seriously and making sure I was like finishing what I had started.
That is a issue that a lot of people run
Yeah.
into. It's like you start and then it's just like it never gets finished.
I have so many like half songs that I just plan on keeping as half songs, but
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think they always say like you have to write bad stuff to get through and get to the point of writing good stuff. So is there like, do you think that that sort of leaving things half unfinished, or like the songs that you do finish, like do you, is there a like thought process behind what you finish and what you don't? Like is it
a little bit. I do feel a lot of pressure to finish songs, but then with my latest like EP, there were a couple songs on there that were half songs that I pretty much chose to keep as half songs. Like I made it sound like it had an ending to them, but they're quite short. They're only a minute long. Because I was like, I'm pretty happy with where this is, and I kind of got the message that I wanted to get across, and I think if I were to expand on it, it would kind of be redundant. Like I was just super happy with where it was, even though it was super short and like technically unfinished. So I was like, well, that's okay. Like, what if I just released it anyways? But then there are other songs that I try to push to finish if they have like more fuller or like complex ideas. But writing those half songs has helped me get just it's good it's like helping me just get out more and more practice with writing in general. So
That's interesting. I've never really thought about it like, because like I have plenty in my notes and it's just like a verse or a chorus. And it's
yeah,
just like, I think those things are just going to live there as
yeah,
that. Like I've gone back through and I'm like, oh, maybe I should finish this. But it's like, I'm already writing these other new ideas.
yeah,
How are we gonna find the time to do all of these things? But
yeah,
releasing them as kind of like shorter little snippets, like
yeah,
it I mean, there are some things where it's like you write it and it's like if you're going to continue, it is just going to be the same thing over and over. So
yeah.
just putting it out and like if you have something small and you like it, just put it out.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
great
fun.
kind of
It
approach.
it takes some pressure off of you too.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, you just have to convince them to listen for a minute rather than like the whole like 3.5 or whatever, you know,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
too.
Mhm.
Um, so I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but was there like a definitive moment that you kind of decided like, oh, you're like writing these songs, you're releasing these songs. At what point did you kind of commit to that as something that you were pursuing long term?
Um, Probably after the release of La Vie en Rose, which was like my first official cover that blew up, but that was very encouraging, and so I started writing a lot more stuff and kind of getting opportunities from it, like, one of my mom's coworkers, he's very interesting. He's developing like a VR game for fun as like a personal passion project, which is really impressive. Like I wish I could do that, but he really wanted to incorporate music into it, so he like hired me to write 3 songs for it, and then that's Where Do You Want to Go, Somebody to Love, and Hometown. Those are all for that game, like for his like prompts and ideas that he had. And that was also really encouraging because I was so new to songwriting kind of. It was kind of nice to have his guidance. Like I would kind of like the song to sound like this or have this theme, and then once I got even more comfortable with that, and I put it out and I felt really excited about it, I was like, I should just keep going. So I generally try to have like one release per year because of that. Although I might be skipping this year, but school's just been crazy, but I do have something ready to record. I just need to like make the time for it. But yeah, like once La Vie en Rose came out and like the things that happened thereafter, it was just very encouraging for me to take it a lot more seriously.
Yeah, I think one of the big things with music is like it's hard to see that kind of instant gratification
Yeah,
because it's like those streams come over time and it's like with something that you put so much time into, you want there to just be the results like
I
right
know,
then and
right?
there, but that
Yeah.
is never the case.
No.
So having something that like you said, like La Vie en Rose just kind of happened that way, like that definitely is going to light a fire under your ass and want you to like
Yeah.
keep going. So that's, I mean,
Yeah, that was really exciting.
I'm sure that's a great, especially since it was
Yeah.
like a cover, like that's a
Mhm.
great kind of kickstart to push you
Yeah.
into wanting to do more and more.
Mhm.
Um, is there a common theme or idea that you think often like inspires a lot of your writing? Like, is there something that you think like someone looking at your repertoire, if you will, would see a common like topic or theme within your music, or is there something that like inspires your writing a lot?
For sure. I think I write a lot about relationships that I observe in like other people around me, as like kind of less than whatever is going on in my life. So like, Somebody to Love is about, okay, the sun's coming through, but Somebody to Love is about the relationship between like my best friend and her boyfriend because they have like this really nice like relationship with each other. It's really nice to see, and that was super like heartwarming. So I wrote about that, and um but then I also have songs like Who Are You to Say, which is pretty much the opposite. It's kind of like a FU song. But it wasn't because I went through like the worst relationship in history. It was kind of just also observing like what other people were going through in life, that just kind of made me want to write about it.
Do you think that because oftentimes like we see people writing about their own kind of experiences. Do you think taking it from the approach of, I'm not necessarily telling my own story, but I'm writing it from like an observational perspective, do you think that that adds kind of a different taste to the songs that you write?
I would like to think so, but I think if you don't know this context going in, you might listen to it and be like, man, she's been through some rough relationships. But I mean, I'm not really like clarifying that anywhere except for on this podcast, really. But I think people will see a lot of variety in how I approach the same topics, like relationships, like somebody to love and who are you to say are like really opposite messages. So I think there's a good like I can approach it from any angle. Yeah.
Do you write them from the perspective of like you're involved, or do you write it more, I mean, obviously it might depend, but do you write it more so from the perspective of like watching it happen, like essentially like as if it was like you're narrating a movie kind of deal?
Mm. I write it from like first person perspective, like as if I was the
Okay.
person experiencing it. Um, yeah, I don't really do third person that much, I don't think.
I mean, it's an interesting kind of perspective to take. Like,
Yeah.
it's not your own experience, but you're still able to put yourself in those shoes to write those kind of stories.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's people directly in my life. So I feel
Right.
like pretty strongly for them. So it's almost like whatever you're feeling, I'm feeling because like I want like the best for you. So, um, but yeah, it's not as direct as I think a lot of people's like sources for inspiration are.
I think it still adds a really kind of cool and interesting take. I mean, I've never done something like that, but that makes me
Yeah.
kind of want to.
It's pretty fun. Like, man, some people have lots of stuff going on, but there's also like really pretty things you can write about or just like yeah, it's nice.
um, I think kind of I've gathered this a little bit from listening to some of your stuff, and I kind of touched on it. You have a very kind of unique style in the way that it's like a bunch of different genres kind of intermixed, which makes this
Mhm.
question a great one for you. If you had to create a new genre around the style of your music, what would you call it?
Oh my gosh. Um, that is such a great question. Maybe some sort of like mix between jazz and pop, um, or like folk and jazz. Like you said at the beginning. Um, I think those are big sources of my inspiration. Um, like I don't know, whatever, like if you know the artist Eloise, she is pretty much the like genre style that I want to like emulate. Like I think she is such a good artist. So I always try to like um write music a little bit in the style like hers.
No, I mean, I think because like when I was listening to it, I was like, okay, you have a lot of these like acoustic sounds to it. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot of like guitar, maybe even some like ukulele type deals in there. But then it's like the like stylistic of the like the structure of like the writing itself is very like jazz chord-esque. And so it's like very
Yeah.
different because I think jazz, I think like brass, I think piano, I think like stuff like that. And you get the
Yeah.
like guitar, like you get every couple minutes where it's just like a little like solo kind of deal if you're
Yeah.
talking like your typical jazz, but it's like it was like a I had to like think about it for a second because it's not the sounds that you would associate with something like that, but it worked really well. Like
Yeah, thank
jazz and
you.
folk are like not exactly neighbors, but like
Yeah.
they can be acquaintances in
Yeah,
situations like
yeah,
this.
totally. I think just because I grew up with that strong influence with my piano teacher of like doing jazz songs, that was kind of the first type of like chord progressions I turned to when writing music. Um, and then I just ended up putting a different like writing style over it. But that was like my base. It was from my piano teacher.
So you like grew up playing like jazz and everything like that.
Yeah, not that well at the beginning. It was just a lot of like, here's a basic chord. But I think it's nice to be able to like learn a lot more, especially since I picked up classical and like going a lot more like in depth with theory. It's just making learning music a lot more fun. So I'm excited to like apply that to new songs.
I was gonna say, do you think the classical I mean, it is, like you said, rather new to your stuff. Do you think it's bled into any of the stuff that you've written so far?
Um, Probably just in how I structure like voice leading or like what I consider to be important in piano in terms of bringing out the melody. I will also try to bring out in my songs, but I think generally I try to keep my piano pretty simple in my songs because I do like to put a big emphasis on like the vocals being like the most present part of most of my songs.
As they should be.
Yeah.
Listeners are, I mean, as humans, we're more attracted to the human voice more than anything else when it comes to sounds. And so it's like that's why you get, when there's layers and layers of vocals, that's where you're going to see a lot of success. Not that everything
Yeah.
should just be vocal on vocal on vocal, but like it helps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a release or a song that you've put out that you think best embodies who you are as an artist, like your overall sound? Like if you had one song to kind of show someone and sell them on listening to you as an artist, do you know what that song would be?
Yes, it would be Who Are You to Say? I think it's like my favorite song by far. Um like the one I'm most proud of, like it's I think it's pretty hard when you put out music to kind of be proud of your own songs because like you're your own worst self-critic, but like Who Are You to Say I'm like really happy with. Like there's not much I would alter. I think it's pretty catchy, so like it people would listen to it instead of being like, man, this is slow build. I think I have a pretty um like interesting melody and I like the lyrics a lot and I like what I did with the harmonies a lot. I love the chords. It's so jazzy, so I think that's like the most recent reflection of what I think my current style is. It's like the best representation that I wish everyone could hear first if they like went to my music page as opposed to Lavi and Rose because I think it's such a change in style. I think this one represents me best.
Is that, I mean, because I've a lot of artists have said that the ones that they find is their like favorite or the one that they think is like most accurate for themselves is not the song that they see people like consuming a lot, and it's usually quite the opposite. It's like it's the top song is usually one of your least favorites. Do you think that's the same for
That
you?
is so true. Like, Who Are You to Say is probably like one of my like least streamed songs. But I'm like, no, because I love it so much. But Lavi and Rose, I am proud of it, but it's just I recorded it when I was like 16. So my voice was a lot like different. And it's you know how like it's embarrassing to hear like videos of yourself singing as a kid? It's kind of like that. I'm like, my voice. It was so like different back then. So I want people to be able to when they like go to my artist page, like the first thing they see, I would prefer it to be like the most recent reflection of what my voice sounds like now and what my style is now. Because I think um the way I sang and my voice has like changed quite a bit since 16 years old. So um it's interesting, but I hope I can get more music out there and then, you know, more people can hear um what I currently think my style is.
Do you, I mean, it's also it's a little like disheartening in a way because it's like that's not even like it's a cover you did, you know, it's not
Yeah.
like you want like why is it the one that I covered
Yeah.
rather than all the ones that I've written, the one that's like
Yeah.
shining through?
I
But I
don't even
mean,
know if it's disheartening. It's almost just more like embarrassing. I'm like, it's like if like your mom posted this really embarrassing like video on Facebook of you of like a cover you did when you were a lot younger and then like everyone was seeing it. It kind of feels like that a little bit. Not to say I'm ungrateful for like how it turned out, but it's just interesting like getting older and my voice maturing and then like listening back on that song. Like I pretty much can't now, but yeah.
um yeah, I mean it's hard because it's like it's not even a reflection necessarily of like your writing style. Do you think that who are you to say
Mhm.
is reflective of, I mean, like you said, it's reflective of where your sound is now. Do you think it's reflective of what is yet to come?
Absolutely. This next song that I really want to record is really similar in style to Who Are You to Say, which I want to be careful that I don't make it sound like exactly the same.
Mhm.
Um, but I think I'm also really happy with this like song that I want to record. Because I also think it's like a good it's what I wanted it to sound like. So I'm happy with that. Yeah.
I mean, you have everybody, I think, in different timelines goes through different phases of like finding their sound and everything. And if you think that that is kind of your projection forward, I think you're right in time with like that is just where your music is going to
Yeah.
sit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, which is always good. Like we
Mhm.
love a little experimentation, but we also love when things are kind of put
Yeah.
together.
Exactly.
We love a little bit sense of centrality, if you
Yeah,
will,
yeah.
which is sometimes hard to do because it's like you're exposed to so much music and you want to do
Oh,
so many
yeah.
different things that it's like
Mhm.
you can't do it all. And that,
Mhm.
but yeah, excited to see
Yeah.
what is yet to come.
Thank you.
If you had to pick two or three artists that you think your music is kind of like a combination of,
Mm,
who would you choose? Or
okay.
who would it be? I mean, I guess it's not really a selection, but who would it be?
My top 2 would be Eloise and Leve. Eloise is a lot more like jazz pop, and Leve is like pure like straight up jazz pretty much, but she's really cool. She's like a half Icelandic, half Chinese like artist, and I just think she's great. She has like a really pretty style. So I really like the like chord progression she uses, but I love Eloise's like production style. So I would love to be like a fusion of them both.
Do you think your music kind of is?
Honestly, yeah. So I think it's getting there. So I'm happy with that.
Are those probably the two artists that were at the top of your Spotify Wrapped?
Oh my God. I was top 0.5% listeners for Eloise like this year and last year. So
Clearly
yeah.
there's an influence
Oh
there.
yeah.
um, what excuse me, what is an outside passion of yours that you feel impacts who you are as an artist?
Ooh, probably just audio engineering, which is, I mean, they're very correlated, but like that's my major. And going into it, I found a lot more interest just outside of music. Although like the audio engineering program is really music focused, like I got this huge interest in like sound design for film and video games, which like I've been so busy this year just doing like a lot of projects for that. So I got super into like location recording on film sets and then doing like post audio and sound design and Foley, and I'm doing the sound design and music for a video game right now, which has been so fun. Because it kind of lets me apply like my music abilities, but not for like songwriting with lyrics, but for like, what would be in the background of a game, which is kind of interesting. But like everything I've learned in like my major is nice because I can pretty much directly apply it to music. So like all the skills I'm learning right now for film and video games are like all techniques that I can use in music production. Um, and like my latest class, Audio 2, which just finished, thank goodness. It was really tough. It was so fun because we had to like get a band in and like record them and like for the whole semester basically just like go from a super rough like tracking session mix to like a really final version, like this is what you would release. And we were working on it like all semester. That was a super big like learning process for like my skill set and like how to produce music on my own, which is super fun.
Do you think that, like you said, like some of the stuff that you know from music production feeds into that and vice versa? Do you think any of that feeds into like how you approach your own process of putting songs together? Like obviously like you've worked like working with Foley and stuff like that, and sound design is a different type of audio or work really.
Yeah.
And so it's like, do you think that that kind of has guided your approach in how you go about like recording different things for your music at
That's
all?
interesting. The only thing I think it would really have an impact on is like how I set up my sessions, which is a kind of boring answer, but I've just gotten like a lot quicker with Pro Tools, and I'm just kind of learning the more ideal ways to like route things and set up things, especially because I had to get pretty like fast with it when I was doing like a bunch of film projects over the summer. Um, but I'm not sure how much it has influenced like actual like songwriting or how I'm like structuring anything. It's probably just more so on the production side, like getting a little more efficient.
Do you ever find yourself adding any like cool different kind of sounds into some of your songs just from like your experience with sound design and anything like that? Like do you ever do anything like super experimental?
That's interesting. Well, up until this point, I've only worked with Leah for doing like music
Mhm.
production, so I really do leave a lot of the creative choices up to her because I really like respect her as an artist as well. So I think that's something I'll find out when I start like getting into more of recording my own stuff. Like this next song, I would love to record at Belmont, like with their like studios and equipment because it's so nice. So I guess we'll see what comes of that. Yeah.
So what do you think is, if you had to like set the scene essentially for someone to listen to your music, like what is like the best like context in which to kind of consume some of the stuff that you've written? Like what kind of
Like
like
like what ideal scenario?
yeah, like set the
Um,
stage for us.
Let me think. Okay. Would want someone to be outside.
Okay.
Um, okay. This is very corny. Probably just outside, like at some nice little cafe. I want it to be relaxed. Like you're gonna be relaxed probably. This isn't something you would listen to like on a run. Um, so like just outside, it's a nice day. You are enjoying the weather, you're at like this coffee shop, and then um like the coffee shop is playing jazz music, and then maybe like one of my songs comes on, or you decide to listen to something like along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's, I think like I this is something new that I added this
Hmm.
season. It's just kind of interesting because it's like not everybody's music is something you want to listen to if you're like pre-gaming for a party, and not
Yeah,
everything is
no.
something you want to listen to when you're going for a run. But there
This,
are types of music that kind of like your coffee shop vibe is like
yeah.
nice little like lighthearted, folky, acoustic kind of
Oh yeah.
vibe, maybe something like jazzy. It's like
Yeah,
that's
this is
perfect.
pretty mellow music. Don't listen to it while pre-gaming. You it will
Otherwise, you
kill
won't
the
want to go to the
vibe.
party after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it'll turn into a nice cozy night in, which isn't a bad
Exactly.
thing.
That
But if
that would
your
be really
if your
cute.
plan
Yeah.
is to party, maybe not. um, what is it that you think sets you, excuse me, apart from other independent artists?
Oh my gosh. I have to think on that one. I think I don't know. I think maybe coming from a like a classical background is a little bit different. And also just having a pretty strong audio engineering background. So I feel pretty confident now in being able to do all my own stuff. Also, I meant to mention this earlier as a part of like the beginnings of my songwriting stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
like I was in choir for a long time, like in high school, and that was a big like that's why I include so many like harmonies and stuff. Like choir was a huge influence for sure on my songwriting, like especially like Who Are You to Say and Slow, they're like just riddled with harmonies. So I think I approach my music with a pretty strong choir like influence with which is just like an interesting thing to combine with like a jazzy style or like a classical background. So I think that kind of makes it a little bit interesting to listen to.
Kind of having that combination of like
Yeah.
you grew up playing piano, you grew up in choir, you have this sort of like jazz influence, and now with the whole classical factor, like it's a that concoction of things is
Yeah.
kind of what
It's a
makes,
weird mesh.
I don't know about a weird mesh, but I think it makes for interesting an interesting time.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of impact do you want to have with the music you make, with your artistry as a whole? What kind of impression do you
Mm.
want to leave?
I really want to like move people or have it connect with their own life because I think a lot of the situations I write about are pretty common, honestly, and pretty applicable to like what people might be experiencing in their own life. And while a lot of stuff is from like other people's perspectives, there are a couple from my own, like Slow. It's like a super deeply like personal song. And but I always try to make it so that it's connectable. Like I don't want it um you listen to it and it's like I have never experienced this like such a niche specific situation she's talking about um so I really wanted to connect with somebody and I really wanted to be able to like move them because they can see it and how it like exists in their own life. Yeah, I think it's just a nice feeling when you like move people.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Do you, kind of going off of your answer, do you find that, like, listening back, like in your own, because you know which songs you wrote from your own perspective, which songs you wrote as like the observer, if you will,
Hmm.
do you find that there is a contrast in kind of how you wrote those songs because one is from like essentially first person point of view and the other one is not?
I think some of the ones that are about my own life are a lot slower songs because it's a lot more deeply personal. So whatever I'm writing about is probably pretty like it was important to me at the time. Um so I didn't approach it from like I want to make this sound as catchy as possible. When I was writing it, it was like I really need to like get these feelings out. So let me see like what comes of that. And then you get songs like Slow.
Do you think that you can hear that at all in like a different kind of way? I mean, obviously like you can tell which songs are
Yeah.
slower, but like do you think in any sort of like do you write lyrics in a different way when you're writing
Mm.
like from a true first person perspective versus retelling someone else's story?
I actually think the only difference is probably in like production or the structure of the song. I think generally my lyric style has stayed pretty consistent. I that wasn't like that was never intentionally planned. That's just like something that ended up happening. I think I'm starting to like the lyric style that I'm at, so I've been trying to like keep that consistent regardless of like what perspective it's coming from. So the differences you will hear will be in like just the overall like sound of the song as opposed to the lyrics.
Do you find that one is harder to write than the other, or
Oh,
one takes
personal
you
songs are
longer?
so hard to write. It's yeah, for sure. Like some of them, yeah, some are hard to sing. Like it can be pretty emotional. So, that's why it's kind of nice to almost go from an observer perspective because, um, if you're writing about really like personal stuff all the time, it can be super taxing. So it's kind of nice to be able to still explore like being creative and writing without necessarily always like thinking about like the hardest trials and tribulations of your life. Um so yeah.
I think that's I think you're probably the first person to say it, that like it's harder to write from your own kind of like perspective than from like someone else's, because it's like, I mean, just from the standpoint of you're living those experiences, you think it would
Yeah.
be easier, but then it's also at the same time, like you said, it can be taxing to be writing about all those things all of the time. Like
Yeah.
do you kind of resort to writing like as the observer, I keep calling it, um, when you don't necessarily have anything to write about from your own perspective, or is it just like what kind of sparks that versus writing
Um
your own?
I think I always have something that I could be writing about from my own perspective. It's just like I want to keep a balance. Like I really don't want to burn myself out with
Mhm.
music or songwriting. Um, which is why I'm pretty interested in going down like a sound design route, but then still like doing music seriously, but just not as my main thing, because it can be really like taxing. I think how I differentiate between which ones I write is like preventing burnout, right? Like after doing like a deeply personal song or something, I kind of want to be a little more lighthearted or write about something that's easier to think about. So then I'll go to like the observer perspective, like what's going on around me and how can I write about that? So it's kind of just switching back and forth so I don't get too deep in and like yeah, I don't want to burn myself out too much. So I try to be careful with that.
No, I think burnout is a very real thing, and it's
Yeah.
like some people are fully committed to just live and breathe doing the music thing day in and day out, but a lot of us can't do it.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
hard.
I know I made like a decision a while ago that I was like, I love doing this. I will never stop doing it, but it's like I don't want to get to the point where I'm like forced to be doing this. Like
Yeah.
it's forced creativity is kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah,
Like it's
exactly.
you can't it's I mean if you get into the habit of doing it, cool. But like if you're like forcing yourself to be doing these things, it's either you're gonna have a negative relationship with it and you're not gonna want to do it anymore, or
Yep.
you're gonna start creating a bunch of crap.
Yeah,
At
exactly.
least for a while. Like if you can push through and get there, cool. But like for a while it's gonna be that way. So like I don't think there's like I think some people like are like, oh, like you don't take yourself seriously as an artist if you're not fully immersed in it all the time. But I'm like, if it's something that you're still passionate about and you're still continuing to do and putting a like essentially wearing your heart on your sleeve in a lot of these songs,
Hmm.
I think that is a better way to do it than just full send it and just do it like your life depends on it if that's not what
Hmm.
you really want.
Yeah, for sure. Writing those like 3 songs for the VR game, I had to do them in a pretty short amount of time. That was like, man, I was so burnt out because it was just really hard like writing that much in a short amount of time. Like I wasn't really feeling that creative and I was like, but I need to get this done. And so that was pretty frustrating. And then that kind of made me realize like I really want to approach music slowly because I don't ever want to put myself in a position where I'm like resenting it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like it can happen naturally where you're kind of doing it in a comfortable way and it grows just kind of
Hmm.
as it happens, and then you get more and more comfortable with doing it more and more regularly.
Yeah,
But it's like if you're forcing it, you're not doing yourself any favors.
exactly. Yeah.
It's hard.
Hmm.
um Shoot, I totally forgot what I was going to say. um I think that in that case, that kind of brings us to the last question that I always ask, and kind of what I bodied the whole podcast around, which is why music?
I think, man, it's like such a short question, but a really
It's
hard one to
very,
answer.
very open
Um,
ended.
I think music is a really good way of expressing yourself when you combine it with sort of like layers of production and different chords and backgrounds. You can really deliver a message um, in a really powerful way, like even more powerful than just regular words. I think it really like enhances whatever message you want to get across. Um, and it just connects with people. It gets people through hard times or like uplifts people. It's just like I don't know, it really keeps the world going. Like it's just it it connects people and it moves people, and I think that's like just really important to have.
No, absolutely. It's all about the human connection. It's all
Yeah.
about just kind of the human experience, really, and music does a lot for that.
Yeah.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of the first episode of season 2 of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next Tuesday for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.